All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. Jake Hatch with Locked On BYU. Man, it's been a little while since we've done this, but it is the best week of the year. Like I don't want to start out by complaining, but that's what I'm going to do anyway. This really should have been game day. The fact that it's not is I hate on the SEC plenty, and but I get it. But I have been looking forward to this all year, and the reason is not even really for the game. It is for the game. Like that's why we talk about this, and that's why we do this. But the Holy War truly does last all 52 weeks. Like there is just always back and forth from accusations or slander or shots, or certainly the way that last year's thing ended. And yet it is one of the most underrated and fun rivalries in college football. And I wish that I know we live in I'm on the East Coast, but I know we live in such like an SEC world and an Ohio State world. And I wish more of the country would understand how great this really is.
Well, and that's the thing about this is you're actually going to be able to see it in prime time on the East Coast. It's a 6 o'clock Mountain Time kick, and that is going to allow the East Coast, I think, to see this rivalry in all its glory. And for the first time in 16 years since 2009, both teams are ranked in this matchup.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that it exists all year round. We call it in my sports radio market up here in Salt Lake City. It's a 24/7, 365 rivalry. It literally exists in every facet of everyday life here in Utah. And the nation, I think, is very quickly going to find out what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, and I'm glad that the week is finally here. And honestly, like if people didn't go watch the end of last year's and the stuff that happened after the game and the way things went down and how Utah fans are probably still upset about, the holding call, just everything else. Like it was, it is must see. So go rewatch, like finish the video, but then go watch that and go check that out because it'll get you excited for this weekend. Big picture, I'll back up a little bit before we go super far into the game. But just big picture, the season has gone as well as you could have thought, right? From an overall wins and losses. I know there are things to win every game. Like nobody plays anything perfectly, but things to clean up. But I think you looked at the beginning of BYU's schedule and you kind of thought like, dude, worst case, they really need to be 5-1 going into this game. They need to take care of the business in the out of conference. Although road trip at ECU, not maybe the easiest, group of 5 team that you got to go make a road trip for. And then you look at the first conference game, they take care of business there. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and to get to this point, 6-1, pretty impressive. And then you mentioned it too for Utah, maybe some of the similar stuff, right? They obviously get mollywopped by Texas Tech, who looks like they're a lock for the playoff at this point, but a pretty good year for them in rebounding from what they've done. But for BYU, the vibes have to be pretty high, but this feels like the litmus test for sure.
You're no doubt about that. Here's the thing. BYU had a really soft first half of the schedule. And you're right. 5-1 was probably the worst you could accept under the circumstances of who they were facing and the fact that BYU was 11-2 coming off of an incredible campaign last year. Yes, I know that Jake Retzloff wasn't a part of the program, and that obviously I think dampened some of the expectations for this team. But I think internally they believed that Bear Bachmeier was going to be everything he's been for this program so far. So it has been a great start for BYU, but as I like to say, the real work, it's starting right now because now you're going to go up against Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, and Cincinnati. That gauntlet will prove a lot of what this BYU team is actually made of.
Yeah, for sure. Thoughts on coming off of what was very now, not as emotional as what will happen on Saturday at 6 p.m. local time, but still coming off of a very emotional double overtime win. Dude, I was so dry, falling asleep during that, and then the Utah game was on late too. Trying to catch everything I could before this matchup. But a double overtime win, just draining physically, emotionally, mentally, all those things. Has Kalani or anybody, have they talked about how you rebound so quickly from that?
Their whole thought process is that, hey, this is what we signed up for. Now, that game against Arizona had one additional thing is the fact that they played, it was an hour and I think officially 12-minute rain and lightning delay that ultimately made the overall game time more than 5 hours. And that is the draining part about it, is they were engaged for that long when usually football games 3.5 hours and you're done. So that only added, I think, to the drain that came out of that one. But the nice part is I think BYU is prepared for stuff like this. They know that they have skated through the easiest portion of their schedule, and they're fully aware of what the situation is, the implications of this next stretch of games, and they're eager to go chase it.
I'll get right back to the video, but first, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. Do not delay. We're like halfway through the month. The offer only goes through October. But if you've been waiting to deposit, if you've been waiting to put money into the app, you don't even have to do that now. You get a free $20 play by putting our code in CFA for college football addiction on the Sleeper app. The link in the description literally will auto populate that for you. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to deposit if you're cheap or you just don't trust whatever. Go and make a free play right now. You get a free $20 on the Sleeper app. You go in, you pick more or less on at least two players, games that you like. They've got free picks all the time. I saw that last night Jared Goff had a more or less of 0.5. Go and deposit on the Sleeper app right now. If you also want a $100 match up to $100, you can get that. But again, you don't have to. You just get a free $20 play. Go and play. We'll play that live on the Power 2 on Wednesday, give you some of our favorite picks from the weekend, let you know how we did last week so you can trust or fade what we're doing. Appreciate Sleeper for their support. Go check them out. When you look at this matchup, we'll talk quarterback first. Overall, with Bachmeier, just thoughts on, has he, I know the schedule hasn't been insanely difficult, so you're not trying to like crown somebody before, but also like, just considering who he was and what he was coming into this thing, has he exceeded expectations? Has he been about what you expected? Has he like just thoughts there?
Well, he's a true freshman quarterback. So I think by any measure of how you could have rated this young man, he's exceeded expectations. He's got BYU ranked in the top 15 in the country. They're 6-0. He's put together some pretty impressive stats that are either equal or at surpassing what Jake Retzloff had put together at this point last season. And the fact that he's 19 years old and was playing high school football this time last year, it's absolutely incredible to consider where he was at, especially considering he's a transfer from Stanford, spent part of spring ball there, had to finish up their quarter system, didn't get to Provo until late June, and now is BYU starting quarterback. It's a remarkable story, and by all measures, he has absolutely exceeded expectations.
On the other side with Dampier, it leads the team in obviously passing, but rushing as well. So something you have to be very cognizant of. And I ask this question a lot because there's so many mobile quarterbacks in college football now. But and the real answer is that, like, man, we'll see how we do. But nobody is like built a defense that's just like, yeah, we shut down mobile quarterbacks, because it is just such a wrinkle that is very tough for teams. But that said, how well equipped do you feel like BYU is defensively to at least limit or handle that in some regards?
Well, I'm concerned because they played a very similar type quarterback in Noah Fafita last week. And if you watch that game, you saw him escape the pocket time and time and time again. And it hurt BYU because when you can't account for a guy's legs, and that's a +1 in the run game, as the coaches like to say, with the QB run element. And I know that Noah Fafita's got an incredible throwing arm. He can really just put it wherever he wants it. His ability to escape the pocket is very concerning, especially considering I think that a guy like Devin Dampier, he's better with his feet than I think even Noah Fafita is. So
Yeah.
BYU, they got about as good of a preparation as they could for this guy. Speaking of Devin Dampier going up against Noah Fafita, but I've got my concerns about if they couldn't contain Noah Fafita, how are they going to go about that this week? And I'm sure that Jay Hill and his staff are going to be scheming something up to make sure that they can avoid that as much as possible.
Thoughts on where BYU may have the biggest advantage in this game? Something that comes to mind for me, and I don't want to steal your thunder, is their ability to potentially just run the ball very effectively. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that, and then maybe anywhere else that they may have an advantage in the matchup.
Well, I'd like to think that, but Utah is actually, in terms of overall output, outrushing BYU. The Utes are 8th in the country right now. These are two teams that are just running the ball at will against one another. So that could lend itself to this being an interesting game that both these teams, whoever runs better wins that football game. So in theory, it's an advantage for BYU. But on the flip side, Utah's thinking the exact same thing. We're going to control the line of scrimmage with our vaunted offensive line and run it down their throat. Where I think BYU can find an advantage is that BYU has a pair of linebackers, and I'm saying this by adding that I expect that Jack Kelly will do everything. I mean, everything within his power to play in this game because he didn't play last week after getting injured against West Virginia, but they said he practiced last week. So if he's able to go, that tandem of Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly, their ability to just make plays, whether it's in coverage, in the run, rushing the passer, they are true threats on every single play, and they're going to be a big reason why BYU is going to have any success, it feels like, in this game.
We talked about Dan Pierre. Is there a matchup for Utah that worries you outside of just his escapability and his legs?
I am a little bit concerned about the offensive line of Utah going against BYU's defensive line because I already mentioned the fact that BYU struggled to contain Noah Fafita. This is a Utah offensive line that's got two premier tackles, and what I have been told is they expect north of 20 different NFL scouts in LaVell Edwards Stadium or in the press box watching this game. And they're there to watch guys like Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly from BYU, but they're more there to watch Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu, who are expected to be first, if not second round draft picks at the very worst in next year's NFL draft. Those two guys, along with the upperclassmen that got the interior of Utah's offensive line, if they can bully BYU's defensive line, which has had its warts this season, that could be a major factor in this contest.
Do you think there's an advantage coaching? Like, I love Kalani Sitake, but I have a lot of respect for what Whittingham has done too there. I like Sitake more for, I'll tell you, like in following BYU the last few years, I I like more of what he does, like building the program than necessarily like the game day. Like, I think the culture, which certainly factors in with like the place they're at and the faith and everything else too. But I that's what I have the most respect for him for. Not that Whittingham hasn't done a great job of building a really good program at Utah as well. That's not. But anyway, all that said, thoughts on the coaching matchup?
So these two staffs, if there are two college football staffs that know each other inside and out, I'd like to meet them because we're talking about this is guys that have played and worked at these universities and worked with each other for years. Kalani Sitake was Kyle Whittingham's right-hand man for more than a decade. Jay Hill, very similar circumstance in multiple positions at Utah, having played there and the like. Jason Beck, a quarterback at BYU. Marky Atuaya, the running backs coach. Micah Simon at Utah. They're all BYU guys or Utah guys. And the back and forth between these two staffs, they know exactly what one another are going to do. So I honestly think it's an absolute wash between these two coaching staffs.
Should be a lot of fun. Is this the kind of rivalry for those that are maybe not as familiar or not BYU, not Utah fans, but just enjoy college football? How chippy does this thing get?
It gets very chippy. Let's put it this way. We've had moments in rivalry history where a Cougar fan, speaking of BYU, decided it was a great idea to jump out of the stands and attack a Ute cheerleader. He ended up getting ground and
Was it, wait, it was a female cheerleader?
no, it was a male cheerleader.
Okay,
But
all right. It makes me feel a little bit better. It makes me feel, I mean, not great, but still, like, at least it was a male.
this is the kind of the off the field stuff I'm talking about. We had a Utah Boosters grandson, if I recall correctly, last year, lob a full water bottle out of the stands last year, peg a BYU cheer coach in the head, and get an assault charge for that. So that's the off the field stuff. That's chippy enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the field, yeah, it gets absolutely chippy. These guys barking at each other. A lot of these guys grew up in the state of Utah, and they've been part of this rivalry literally their entire lives. They're representing more than just themselves. They're representing family. They're representing their communities. Literally, high schools, guys have played together in high school are on opposite sides of this rivalry. And the fact that there's transfers between these two universities, Keanu Tanavasa, Carson Ryan from the BYU side of things have transferred down from Utah. John Henry Daly, who was once upon a time a BYU Cougar, now standing out for Utah. Yeah, this is about as chippy as it gets, and there will be plenty of trash talk going back and forth.
Yeah. Makes it all the more fun. We're going to play a game just quickly. And I don't know what your answer would be to this question, but I'm going to give you one side of the aisle and you've got to argue it. And I'm going to argue the other side.
Okay.
I'm going to say that I think this game is more important for Utah because they already have the Big 12 loss. And if they lose this one, maybe they're not eliminated, but it's hard to see them jumping back over Texas Tech because then they're 3 games behind them. They're 2 games behind BYU. And so my thought process there is that if Utah is the more desperate team in this game, does that make them the more dangerous team? So I want to get your thoughts on that specifically. And then I want you to argue the other side. I want you to tell me why this game is more important for BYU to win, whether you believe it or not.
So on the Utah front, it absolutely is of necessity. If you want to play in Arlington, you cannot have tiebreakers. You cannot have lost the tiebreaker to both Tech and BYU because it appears that there's a kind of a breakaway group right now with Tech leading the way, BYU and Utah, Cincinnati, and then we'll see what happens with some of these other matchups this weekend in terms of who actually has a chance to go to Arlington, because I think it's Tech is going to be on one side. The question is who else? Whoever wins this game has the inside track at going to Arlington, in my opinion. I got no problem saying that. And it is absolute desperation time for Utah on that front, because if you've lost the tiebreaker twice already and you're about halfway through the season, you'll be just past the halfway mark. That means you're going to end up being kind of the odd man out at the end of the race if everything holds. On the flip side, why it's desperation time for BYU. BYU spent over a decade hoping, praying, and just trying everything they could to stay relevant when Utah had the upper hand, being in the Pac 12, having a chance to play for a conference title while BYU was playing in independence. And if you got to 6 wins, you knew where your bowl destination was. BYU knows what it's like to be on the outside, kind of left in the cold, and they want nothing more than to have and maintain the upper hand on their rival for at least another year, because it's good to be on top in this rivalry. NIL, BYU's got a lot of money coming in when it comes to recruiting that's helped them really, I think, level the playing field here, and they want nothing more than to be able to say to Utah, hey, that's cute, but we're big brother now.
I know we're a little bit early in the week, but do you have a lean in this one? Are you picking BYU in this game?
I do think that the home field advantage will play in BYU's favor. Now, Utah's not going to be like shock and awe with the stadium. These are the two best stadiums in terms of environments in the Big 12. I got no problem saying that. There's some good environments out there. I'm not saying that there aren't good ones. I think these are the two best. Neither one of these teams are going to be, I think, in awe of what the fans are going to bring to this matchup on Saturday night. But I do think the fact that BYU's back at home playing at LaVell Edwards Stadium, which I don't know if you've noted this already this week, BYU in their last 27 home games is 24-3 at night. Those are night games at LaVell Edwards Stadium. They call them the Vampire Cougs. They call them the Cardiac Cougs. I think they pull through. I'm saying BYU 24, Utah 23.
Dude, should be a classic. Tell us a little bit about Locked On BYU, where people can find it, what makes the show unique, and why folks should tune in.
Well, it's daily BYU content. So if you want all things Cougars all the time, that's what I'm here for. I'm giving you inside intel on AJ DeBonsa and the BYU men's basketball program, because big season ahead on that front. I know this is a college football show, but there's that going on. BYU, they came out of nowhere in a lot of people's eyes last year. If it wasn't for ASU, BYU probably would have been the story in the Big 12 football-wise last year, going from 5-7 to 11-2. We've got you covered every single day, top to bottom, when it comes to all things BYU. So if you want that type of content, we're here for you. Wherever you get your podcast, search out Locked On Cougars, also available on YouTube.
Awesome. We will link all that in the description. Thank you so much, Jake, for taking a few minutes and chatting with us tonight, man. Good luck on Saturday.
It's been a minute, but it's always good to be on with you.
Thanks, buddy.